we are very happy to be like that, and this is really our philosophy to that's why also we are wine growers, and we are not buying any grapes, or we are not buying any wine,
Wine,
anything. We
because
are
we really want to control all the process of making champagne to have a nice expression of the Pinot and also of the Chardonnay. But, yeah.
Okay. And just one or two more questions about that. But I know that having traveled to Champagne often, it can be very rainy and very cold. It's not,
yeah.
every once in a while I see the sun, but even in July, it's like very rainy and cold. So I imagine that could be a problem in terms of a certain way of farming. And also if you could answer,
Yeah,
go ahead, sorry.
yeah. That's a big problem. So
At the moment, yeah, we. I don't know how many times a day I'm looking about the weather on my phone, because it's, yeah, we are biologic, so we use the copper and sulfur, but it stay on the leaves. It didn't go inside. So when it's raining, we have to add more copper and sulfur. So
we have to spray again.
So, and we also put some infusion of plant to help the vineyard to help itself to have more defense between the fungus. So yeah, the season at the moment it's quite rainy and humid. So hopefully we had a little bit of wind, so it's good to take away the from the vineyard and drying the leaves. Yeah. The climate here in Champagne is not so easy sometimes. So,
yes, yeah.
To answer in a way of your question, there is no Saturday, no Sunday.
Okay.
When you have to go, you have to go. Just.
Right. As some other growers.
And no Mother Day, because on Mother Day, so it was Sunday, he leave at 7 o'clock in the morning and go on spray.
Right. Well, that as several producers have told me in Italy and France, it's like, the great thing about your job is that you work with Mother Nature. And
yeah, exactly.
And the bad thing about your job is that you work with Mother Nature. So you can't choose that. So
it's a new challenge every year, because every year
I can imagine.
We had this winter, we had a quite very humid winter, and suddenly a very, very dry and windy spring. So we had at the moment 2 weeks in advance. We have to be very close to the nature in the vineyard to see the evolution, and new challenge every year.
Right. You have to think long term. You can't worry about every day, right? Okay. And how about climate change over the last 10, 15 years, just to make things more difficult? How is that? I mean, I talked to champagne producers, and they actually think it's been a good thing for champagne.
Because the climate changed a little bit, and since now 15 years, we feel the temperature go up. So like this, we can have more concentration of sugar, more expression of flavor. So yeah, it's a good thing for us. But also the climate. Sometimes we don't have really a good winter. Sometimes we don't have really good spring. So again, we have to be very close to the nature and to work at the good time in the vineyard.
Right. And I know that you read articles, and sometimes people like to condense things and just sort of make short statements. And so sometimes people say, well, with the climate change, it warms temperatures up and you get riper grapes, but maybe you lose some acidity. And other champagne producers say, no, that has not been a problem. What has been your experience with that?
Of course, we control the sugar maturity, but we control also the acidity. It's very, very important. So sometimes we prefer to pick
the grapes earlier.
Yeah.
Like this, we can keep
the natural acidity. Because of course we can add acid in the juice or in a wine, but this one is not stable. so we will lose it with the time. So that's why we prefer to pick a little bit earlier to keep the acidity.
Okay. And have you had to change the dosage levels over the years with
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Every year for every blend, we made some blind tasting just to find the best balance between the acidity, the body of the wine, and the sugar level. Yeah.
Okay. Well, now you have several champagnes, and we're not going to talk about every one today. It would be pretty nice to, but just going to talk about a few. So I opened up a glass of your Blanc de Blanc de Bouzy, which, and I love the name, the B3.
Ah, the B3, yeah, BBB.
2013 vintage.
Yeah.
So why did you decide on, since Bouzy is so famous for Pinot Noir, why did you decide to make a Blanc de Blanc in Bouzy? Very unusual.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit because, so in 2011, that was the first year we made this Blanc de Blanc. David knew that his father will will be retired in 2 years, and we thought, all our wine is mainly in Pinot Noir, and all our champagne is mainly Pinot Noir, and we should perhaps educate our customers to a Blanc de Blanc from Jean Vesselle. So we decided to take, and the only shot we had at this stage was the Chardonnay from Bouzy, so to make a tiny cuvée of Blanc de Blanc de Bouzy. And we thought, let's see how it goes and stuff like that. And then in 2014, when the first grapes from Chouilly came in Bouzy to be pressed and to be vinified,
And Chouilly is from the Côte de Blanc.
Chouilly, Côte de Blanc. You know, Chouilly is one of
Okay.
the biggest villages of the Côte de Blanc, 100% Grand Cru.
Okay.
So we thought, David thought, we should just stop making some Blanc de Blanc de Bouzy because we will have the Blanc de Blanc from Chouilly, Côte de Blanc. And so we said, okay. But anyway, we do, for the harvest, we vinificate our Chardonnay from Bouzy, from the Chardonnay from Chouilly, and we done exactly the same vinification for both of them.
Yeah.
And when we made our blend, our blending day, we try all our wine,
each barrel, each tank,
everything.
each food, and everything.
And we had the opportunity to try the two Blanc de Blanc next to each other. I mean, they were together like two brothers, and we tried them. And we thought, but my gosh, it's so extraordinary focus on the terroir. And we thought we should keep the Blanc de Blanc from Bouzy and make, of course, Blanc de Blanc from Chouilly, and both of them would be together. But of course, as the Chardonnay from Chouilly came a little bit later, we have to wait that it should come. So when we decided about the name, we thought we would call it Blanc de Blanc de Bouzy. Yeah.
Can I ask you to repeat that because the sound broke up a little bit?
Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
So when we decide to make the name of the cuvée, we decide to call it BBB, like Blanc de Bouzy,
B3.
and B3, and with a black label and white drawer. And for the Chardonnay from Chouilly, it would be B2C, Blanc de Chouilly. So it will be BBC.
Clever
that
marketing.
Is coming normally in November 2020.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Okay. Thank you. How many bottles of the B3 do you make in a typical vintage?
We do
1,750 bottles.
1,750.
Okay.
1750.
1750. Okay, very good. And do you make it every year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just tasted it, and it is a very distinctive cuvee. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not what you would think of a Volant Blanc, especially if you've had many examples from the Cote de Blanc. So this is a much richer on the palate and
yeah, and
yeah,
we have
it's really the effect of the terroir of Bouzy. So the terroir gave more winey and like a Pinot character for the Chardonnay.
I don't know if you know that.
I like that. That's a good description. I would agree with that.
Yeah. When I first tested, I said in French, of course, il pinot.
Okay.
So it's a Pinot character.
And I don't know if you know that, but the Chardonnay is not a pure cepage, is a cross. And so it's funny to hear that the Chardonnay is coming from Pinot Noir and Gouais. So that means that when it's growing in Bouzy, I think his root remembers that he has some Pinot inside. So if you see what I mean.
Okay. One of the things about that wine is that you vinify it in wood, and which is number one, first to me, a little unusual for Chardonnay, not rare, but just unusual. And secondly, you vinified several of your cuvées in wood.
Yes.
What was the decision for that? Were there other cuvées that you've tried that were vinified in wood from other producers that you really liked, or was this just something that you experimented with? How did that come about?
Yeah, you know, perhaps our Petit Clos, so very tiny cuvées that's of vine in the wineries. So the cuvée of the Petit Clos is a 100% Pinot Noir, and because it's very tiny, we had to vinificate in barrels because the tank. So I started to make this cuvée in '95, and of course, since through the years we were keeping the barrels and using the old barrels.
I put up a picture of you in the
yeah. Good, great. So put some. So we were used to put some. To keep the barrels and use the barrels to vinificate. And always during the blending, we just love to we thought that the wine from the barrels or from the wood is very interesting. And of course, we love the way we were vinificate the Petit Clos because we thought it's such a deep cuvée and a very strong cuvée. So we thought if we would do something nice with the Chardonnay, we want to do it, with wood. We think it's not to give the wood taste because you see how is it? It's not woody characters.
Oh, right.
The idea is just much more to have the micro-oxygenation between the wood and the wine of the air.
Okay.
But yes, we have now several cuvées that we are vinificate in wood. So now we have something like 25 barrels, and we have 4 casks.
Different size.
Big barrels.
Okay. And are any of these new, or are they primarily used oak? Are the barrels brand new? Are the barrels brand new at all, or do you always use used oak?
We use the old one, and for example, for the Petit Clos, we are buying only 1 barrel per year. So that means for the Petit Clos, there is a barrel of a new barrels, a barrel of 1 year old, and a barrel of 2 years old.
Yeah. Okay. For the Petit Clos, it's just 3 barrels, so it's and we want to have a new barrel each year because we really want to have a nice texture and structure. Because the Petit Clos at the moment, we sell it quite old to have a nice evolution after the second fermentation. So that's why we decide to have at the beginning, a nice texture with the wood.
Okay, let's talk about that cuvée, Le Petit Clos. And I have a bottle here. You lose you for a second. There we go. And it's beautifully packaged. Get
Thank you.
the reflection off there. And
Yeah.
as I like to say, this is my joke, and maybe it's a bad joke, but Le Petit Clos, of course, a clos in France is a vineyard that is walled in. So it's appropriate that you have this champagne walled in a box like this. So it comes in its own clos, so to speak, right? So, and there's a wonderful technical sheet that comes with the champagne and all. And well, before we talk about that, there's the bottle there, Le Petit Clos. This is the 2005 vintage.
Wow.
And this is really one of the smallest.
This is the smallest champagne.
Okay, tell us about that vineyard and tell how old are the vines and about how you make that.
40 ans, 40 years old.
40, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And you use a horse to plow the vineyards, is that correct?
Yeah, did you see that?
I did.
Yes, since this year, because of course, we didn't use the weed killers since now 20 years in the vineyard. And most of the time I use tractors to make the plugging. But since this year, we have a good connection with a woman who have two horses, and she came every it depends of the moment, but she came in a Petit Clos and in different place in also in Bouzy to work with the horses.
Okay, and these.
I don't know if you could see that.
Oh yes, okay. There's a little reflection, but I think we can make it out. You see the horse here?
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, beautiful, great, thank you. There he is. And this is a Belgian horse, is that correct?
It's how you call that? Ardennais. Ardennais?
It's come from the region.
The region. So.
Right.
It's not too big. It's quite small and quite strong.
And I have one gentleman here who's participating today. His name is Stan Brown, and he said, "How many vineyards do you use the horse for?"
This year,
he wants to know if it's just for Petit Clos or do you use it for other vineyards as well?
We also use the horses for different places in Bouzy. And this year we work with 0.5 hectares. 0.5 hectares.
Okay. Now this you also vinify in wood, and I noticed on the sheet here which comes with the champagne that you have 3 barrels, and they're all from oak from the Champagne region.
Yes.
Not from Burgundy or Bordeaux or anywhere else. So
No. We work with a barrel producer since now 20 years, and he makes his own selection of wood in Montagne de Reims. And in a couple of years, in 2 years, we will have the opportunity to have some new barrel with the forest of Delphine family in Montagne de Reims. So it will be very local and very family selection of wood.
that's great.
The forest is about I would say 10 kilometers from
from Bouzy.
From Bouzy, I would say. Do you say that? Distance.
Yes.
Distance.
Yes, exactly.
About 10 kilometers. So it's very near to Bouzy.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It was a beautiful forest, and we
with a nice exposition on a very small deep soil, topsoil. So the oak grow very slowly, and it's very, very fine inside. And so 2 years ago, we made a selection in the forest with the barrel producer, and we cut them, and now they are drying because the wood need 3 years of dryness. Dryness.
To be dry.
To be very dry, and so next year we will produce some new barrel with our forest.
Okay. I have another question here from a gentleman who's watching today, and it's another question about the horse. Everybody loves the horse. So he's from Peter Nelson. He wants to know: is the horse used just for plowing, or are there other uses? And how many times is the horse used during the growing season?
Pour l'instant, c'est que
Que le-
only
Plugging.
plodding for the moment. The
Yeah.
Right,
horses,
right.
yeah, only plodding.
And do you keep the horse the rest of the year, or does he go somewhere else to a different farm? Or
No. It's not our horses.
It's not ours.
okay,
It's a woman who are working for a different producer. So every day she change the place, and but she work every day with 2 horses.
okay, that's got to be an unusual situation for those horses. So, but
Yeah.
I'm sure they love it. So
Yeah.
now the vintage I have is the 2005, which is, of course, was a superb vintage in Champagne, and the wine has wonderful freshness. I highly recommend this. This is, it's one thing to just make a few bottles of something and have the smallest vineyard, but if it's not, the wine isn't of the quality that you're looking for, none of that makes a difference. And the wine I think is outstanding. And great complexity, great freshness. Tell us a little bit about that vintage. And is that the current vintage or 2005?
05?
Yes.
What do you mean?
Is that? That's what I tasted when I received the bottle. Do you have any other vintages that are a little bit younger that have been released, or is 2005 the current release?
Yeah. So now we are selling the 2007.
7, okay.
7. Le 6, on n'a pas encore fait, je crois. No. So we done 5, 7. We think that probably 6 will come next.
Yeah, because for the particular, we make a vintage every year.
Okay.
And it's quite a small volume. And in fact, when we finished the 05, we test the 06, 07, and 08, and we choose the one is ready to be drink. So that's why sometimes, but for example, this year we finished the 05 and we go
07
directly to 07.
Okay.
And maybe we can go back on the 06 or 08. It's really depend of the wine, of the balance, of the freshness,
Yeah, that's interesting. I've noticed that with other producers as well, like with 2008 and 2009. They released their 2009 before 2008. So, and you really, I don't know there's any other place in the world where they do that. I mean, maybe it's a tiny bit of, of a Barolo Reserva or a rare Napa Cabernet, but I think that's great that you do that and some of your colleagues do that, if it needs time, you're going to wait on it.
Yeah. I think so. We don't have to be stupid to follow the year because the number have to be following. There's also something perhaps again about our philosophy about vintage, because as for the Petit Clos, as for the B3 will be the B2C also, but also for our vintage. All of we do, we have a cuvée we call Prestige, and Prestige as a vintage, and we do a vintage every year, and even if it's a bad year, because sometimes it's happened, we like to do.
Not in Champagne, no.
Yeah, but it's so easy to make a good vintage with very good grapes, but that's why we like to make a vintage every year, because when the climate is not good with us, we can have some botrytis. So we have to make a very, very strict selection of grapes in the vineyard, and also to make a different selection of juice during the pressing, just to keep the best part. So that's why we like to make a vintage also when the year is not so easy for us.
And sometimes it's much more challenging, and frankly, most of the time I have more satisfaction with my very hard vintage, I would say, than with the easy vintage, because I think we know how we how hard it was.
How hard you had to work, right? That's an interesting. Go ahead.
For example, at the moment we are selling the 01, so in magnums. And it just I love this year.
Difficult year, difficult harvest, but now the wine is terrific.
It's terrific. So,
Great.
and also I think it's also something like respectable with the nature, because the nature gives us grapes every year,
Right.
And in some way, if you're doing a vintage every year, that's in some way you give the opportunity to have a memory of the year, if you see what I mean, and a memory of what the nature wants to give us. So I like the way that we do vintage every year. That's our philosophy.
But sometimes it's quite small volume. But
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's a great thought about you have that memory, that vintage, and you make several other cuvées that are non-vintage, and you have reserve wines, so you can
of course.
get a consistency on that. But I think that's great that for that vintage, you have the memory of that vintage, so it's not like any other wine. It's very distinct. I think that's important to remember. And I remember I love movies, and I remember hearing a quote from a famous director in Hollywood saying that he knows he had some successes and he had some failures. He said, but you know what? I love them all. So it's his work. I mean, he put his heart and soul into it, and even if other people didn't like it, he did. So I think that's you sound like it's the same way of thinking for you.
It's like our baby, you know. It's like,
exactly.
it's like our children. We can't say, oh, I prefer you.
Right. Well, they all have their advantages and maybe disadvantages, but they all, like you said, they're all very personal to you. So let's talk a little bit about, before we get to the rosés, and I know that's a specialty with you as well. You have several. What would you pair? What are your favorite food pairings with first the Blanc de Blanc, the Bouzy, and also then the Les Petits Clos? Two very different cuvées.
So you mean food, the food combination between the wine and
exactly.
For the Blanc de Blanc, les huîtres, hein, c'est trop bien ça. Oysters, all the seafood,
Raw fish.
Okay.
or raw fish. You know, as we love to be in Japan, love to cook Japanese food. So
okay.
That's the one, which is very nice. For the Petit Clos, actually, it's so deep and so rich that sometimes we just like to drink on itself. But which kind of combination we can?
With the Petit Clos, we can have some grilled scallop with a nice creamy sauce, because the Petit Clos is also nice. We have a nice acidity and a nice roundness, so a little bit of creamy character. So it's good to have a good association with that. And
listen to the chef.
Okay. All right. And we should mention, I don't know that we said that before, but Le Petit Clos is 100% Pinot Noir, yes?
Yeah,
only Pinot Noir.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So from the smallest clos in Champagne, and it's really inside the village of Bouzy. So we have a very, very nice maturity over there, and most of the time we have 10 to 12 days in advance to compare to the other vineyard around the village.
Okay. Is it picked later than the other Pinot Noir in the village? The grapes harvested later?
No.
Most of the time we pick the Petit Clos at first, because we have a very good ripeness.
Okay.
Otherwise, we not have enough facility.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, the difference for the Petit Clos is we didn't make the malolactic fermentation for the Petit Clos. That's why we kept it so long, and that's why also we really want to keep the natural acidity.
And what about on the other cuvées as far as malolactic?
All of them are malolactic.
No malolactic. Okay. Which helps keeps a good freshness of these wines. So, and I noticed here on this 2005, it was disgorged in September of 2018. So you've got it on the lees for almost 12 years, right?
Yeah.
And is that with every vintage, or does it change a little bit, or?
No, about the same. I mean, depending, of course, but it could be. It's at least
10 to 11,
12 years. At least,
minimum 10.
Minimum 10.
Okay, great. And I know we have a lot of people here in the United States watching today, and they have more money than I do. So they go to France, they go to these 3-star restaurants. So I'm curious as to several, I'm kidding, of course, but several champagne producers always tell you, well, we are on, every 3-star Michelin, restaurant in Paris or throughout France. And can people find Le Petit Clos at some of the top 3-star Michelin or some of the top Michelin restaurants in France?
Actually,
in Champagne, yeah,
yeah.
in Racine, so it's a 2-star Michelin.
Okay.
They make a selection of Petit Clos
and then actually we keep our Petit Clos for US and Japan.
No other markets? Those are the only markets for Japan and the United States? Okay.
Yeah, mostly, because
okay.
for the Petit Clos, we produce 650 bottles.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite small volume. So,
yeah,
it's 1/3. Well, yeah, maybe 1/4. It's US, 1/4 Japan, and 1/4
the rest of the
Italy.
The Petit Clos is lots of export is
mostly
export.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about your rosé cuvées. You have, I see 3 here that Worth Berkeley brings in. I don't know if there's any more, but let's start with the Brut Rosé, the Eye of the Partridge, the Oeil de Pedry.
Yeah.
There's a bottle. Okay. Thank you. It's 100% Pinot Noir. Tell us about that wine.
Yeah, it's really, I would say, the children of the house. So you have a beautiful color,
yes.
Slightly pink. So I know that for people it's rosé, but for me it's not. Just because you have to know that in the old 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago in this region, we had only Pinot Noir, as we said. And actually, the Pinot Noir was coming from the field to the winery to be pressed. And they were coming with horses at this stage. And the time they were coming, there was a kind of maceration, of course, in the bucket. And then when they press the grapes, the juice was pink. And at this stage, they didn't know how to take out the color. I mean, they didn't use any filtration or anything for decorations. So their champagne were like that. And that's why they call it Œil de Pedry. So this is a very old name. And the name Œil de Pedry is really because of the color. And then in the early 1920, when the big houses were selling the champagne all over the world, they were showing to the customers 2 kinds of champagne: pink champagne, white champagne, but not in between. So the Œil de Pedry had a kind of bad reputation of bad champagne because the color wasn't really pink and not really white.
Right.
So the growers start to take out the color or blend the Pinot Noir with some Chardonnay to make it white. So the Œil de Pedry completely disappeared in the year 1930. And when my father took over the business of his own father, he found some very old bottle from his grandfather. And one day he decided to open it. And when he did this with some friends and some people from wine writer,
okay.
They never tried that before, and they asked him the story of this wine, and they just loved the story. And they said, "But Jean, you should do it again." And he said, "Okay, I don't have to take out the color of my my Pinot Noir."
Right.
And so that's for me the very old fashioned to make Blanc de Noir. So this is the really old-fashioned way to make a blanc de noir. So Œil de Paris is not really a pink champagne; it's a blanc de noir. It's
Okay.
the old-fashioned way.
The old-fashioned way.
Yeah, because now we can take out this natural color with filtration or decoloration to have a white champagne. But for the Œil de Paris, we just make a selection of quite old vineyard with a nice maturity, and also we select the juice with more color after the pressing.
And the color, it just comes from a very short maceration, right? I mean, it just.
Yeah, it's just during the pressing.
Okay.
Because the pressing is we need 4 hours to extract slowly the juice from the grapes. So during this time, there is a small skin contact inside the press.
Well, I'm glad that you've decided to make it again, because and maybe it's something that, you know, if I were selling it, I would say, you know, sometimes, unfortunately, there's people everywhere, I know in the United States, that say, well, I don't like rosé champagnes because they think it's going to be sweet. And I used to argue with those people, and now I say, well, if you don't drink it, I'll drink it. So there's more for me to enjoy. But this would be a way of saying it's not really a rosé champagne. It's like a Blanc de Noir. It's Pinot, and it is all Pinot Noir. And this is kind of on the border between brut and extra brut, correct?
Yeah. It's also quite low sugar level. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For this one, because you can in each bottle you can find the dosage on the back.
Okay.
And for this one, it's 6.5 gram of sugar.
So it's very low on brut.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just, I think six is the cutoff, right, for extra brut.
Yeah.
So just above that, but that's you can barely tell that when you drink it. So, and your second rosé would be a rosé de Sagnier, and if you could describe that as well, that's also 100%.
Rosé de Sagnier, yes.
100% Pinot Noir, yes.
Yeah. So David is going to pick it because
Okay.
I thought another one, but just to show you the color, the big difference between the two.
Yeah.
So you know, in Champagne we have two ways to make rosé: or rosé by contact skin, so maceration, or rosé by blend. And most of the rosé in Champagne are made by blend. So that means that we are making a white vinification, and then we are adding some Bouzy Rouge or red wine, because white and red make it pink. So when I took over the business of my home father, so my first harvest actually in '93, my father was used to make rosé by contact skin. No, sorry.
With the blend.
Rosé by blend.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, but Dad, it's a shame because you have this Œil de Paris, which is very natural way to make the Blanc de Noir, and now you are making a rosé by blend. So he said, well, do whatever you want, and we made the first rosé, and we wanted to have a very beautiful color, a very deep color, because we want to have a really nice difference between our Œil de Paris and the rosé. So that's how it's come, and it's a very nice. So it's a very nice deep color. It's nearly
very different,
red.
Right.
Yeah, it's like what we wanted on this is to have a kind of ruby rosé. You see, ruby, like the
ruby. Yes.
So
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful color
and a nice Pinot expression because
work on like that, and when you want to make that deep color, you are very in the border to be red, and that's also can be very dangerous for the tannin. And the idea here is to have the most fruit we can, the most color we can, but without tannin, because we don't want to have that be too sharp and to.
Right.
So that's why. So actually, the Rosé de Sagnier is really fruity and has a beautiful characters. And as you know, we had two types of cuvée of this one. So the brut, which is and then
that broke up a little bit. Could you repeat that? It broke up a little bit, the sound.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, I said that we make two kind of rosé saigné, two dosage, I should say. So one is brut, as a normal brut rosé.
Okay.
And the other one is a demi-sec, because what we found is, like you said, that lots of people, when they see this kind of color, they think, oh, it's sweet.
Right.
But it's not, because it's a brut. So we said, oh, perhaps we should make one sweet. So we make one a demi-sec rosé that we call it cuvée friandise. I don't know if you have seen this one.
I have not, no. Okay.
So, and this is, so it's 32 grams of sugar per liter. So it's very sweet. So it's a very dessert champagne. Friandise in French, it's like mean a treat.
A treat.
Treat.
You know, treat. Yeah.
Right, right.
And for the demi-sec rosé, we made the dosage with MCR, which is a sugar come from the grapes.
Oh, really?
So it's made with glucose and fructose. So it's better to have a nice mix in the wine, and also have a better fruit expression.
And are the alcohol levels on these the same?
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, yeah.
All right. I see sometimes in the United States a demi-sec, not often, but it's a demi-sec brut, and I don't see too many demi-sec rosé. And I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's quite rare.
Yeah, but most of the time, all the demi-sec are white, but not red,
right.
But not pink.
That's great. That's just another wine you can talk about and discuss, and what makes you distinctive. So, and then of course, since you're in Bouzy, I know there are several other producers that make still red wine and still white wine, the Côte du Champenois. You also produce those.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about those two wines.
So the Côte du Champenois and Bouzy Rouge is very well known. Bouzy has a nice reputation, because you know that in the past tense, when the King of France get crowned,
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It was done in Reims. In Reims.
Oh, okay.
In the cathedral.
Yes.
In the Cathedral of
Yes.
France. And actually, when they get crowned, they had always Bouzy Rouge as a wine.
Oh, really? Okay. Right.
For their party. So then the Bouzy Rouge go nicely to Paris or to Versailles.
Okay.
Because the King of France loved this kind of wine. So actually, it has quite a long story. But the Bouzy Rouge, so we don't make very much of it. So it's a still wine. It's come from the same grapes that the grapes we are using to make champagne. And of course, it's only Pinot Noir. We make as a normal red vinification. So that means we do maceration and the fermentation with the grapes, and like a Burgundy. And then depending of the growers, wine growers, but you have some growers who will do the vinification after in wood, or doing vinification in stainless tank, or whatever, depending of the way you are used to. The idea of the Bouzy Rouge is to be quite a with the characters of the Pinot, with a kind of very fruity and with a tiny acidity to make it light. Okay. I would say.
What is the current vintage on the Bouzy Rouge?
For the moment, we are selling the 2009.
9, okay.
09.
09. Wow. So this spent several years in aging in wood.
No, so we are not using wood for the.
Okay.
No, not for the Bouzy Rouge.
Okay.
But actually, since several years now, we are making a Bouzy Blanc. That was a little joke, actually, I wanted to make, because I wanted to make a Coteau Blanc. So when I said, I want to make a Coteau Blanc like Bouzy Blanc, And everyone said, "Oh, you will make it with the Chardonnay." And I say, "No." I will make with Pinot Noir. So I make 100% Pinot Noir, but vinificated in white. And for this one, we are doing fermenting, barrel fermenting, and we are aging in barrels too.
Okay.
So,
how many? What's the production level? How many bottles of these two different wines do you make?
It's very, very tiny. The Bouzy Rouge we are not doing every year. We are doing. It depends of the. Actually, it depends a little bit of our stock, and if we need to make more champagne or if we have little space for it.
It also depends of the maturity and the balance of the grapes.
Yeah,
for the Bouzy Rouge. Because
we don't do it every year. For the Rouge, we not do it every year. Because when we do, because of the volume of our tank, and
we produce
about 5,000 bottles, so which is quite. It's not big, but it's not.
It's not tiny either, right? Okay. I have one question here from Peter Nelson, who had a question before about the horse, but he wants to know what type of press do you use?
Membrane press.
Membrane press. We have some.
Yeah, the name is Bücher, so it's come from Switzerland, and it's a membrane press. So it's inside. There is a balloon, and we put some air inside and press the grapes slowly to the bottom.
And what are the other presses that are used? What's the advantage of a membrane press? Is it a little more gentle, or you preserve more
gentle? We can use pressure inside, and it's automatic because there is a different program, and after 30 minutes of pressing, we just decompress, make one turn with the press, and press again. So it's very, very gentle.
Okay. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left, and I hate to bring this up, but it's a matter of life. But with the coronavirus situation, I've just wondered how we'll keep it very short, but just how is that affected, and how have your sales been? I talked to another producer last week, and he said that his American importer had bought quite a bit of champagne last year, and part of this was, of course, before the coronavirus, but they were talking about tariffs on champagne. So how has business been in terms of sales to the United States and other countries? And what do you think? Well, first of all, how are things now in France with the restaurants? Are they open yet or not?
Yeah. They just start to open last week. With some restrictions. I mean,
very strict restriction.
Very strict condition as it has to be. So we try to go to a restaurant and just to help them to survive, because really it's very hard situation in France, as I think in all the country are very, very difficult. We had those 2 months of lockdown, and I was hoping that just after the lockdown everything will restart again. But unfortunately, first of all the country all over the world don't finish their lockdown in the same time. So that means we have a kind of, it doesn't work in the same way. And what we feel about France, that people feel very afraid of a second vague, second tsunami with the corona.
Right.
So the situation for the work, I mean, the vine are very in advance this year, and we are pretty sure that we will harvest in August again this year. So that means another harvest in August. So the vine were so lots of work in the vine, but in the winery, I mean, in the office, I mean, for the business, it was very hard. First of all, because we work, our main work is to work export with US, Italy, Japan. So all those countries were very, very attacked by the corona.
Yes,
Even
yes.
in Japan, not very much, but they just stopped the lockdown since the end of May. So we are waiting that people will start again. We are confident. We hope that we hope that people will still drink champagne and be happy. But yes, it's complicated, I would say. We have a little worry anyway, but so we hope, cross finger.
Yeah, but we have to continue to be champagne and drink champagne and wear champagne.
Yes, I didn't notice that shirt. Okay. Well, that's I mean, nature doesn't stop, so you have to continue to work in the vineyards and produce champagne. So, and there's always going to be people in America and other countries that are going to drink it. So, and I'm reminded of a quote from Napoleon, who said about champagne. He said, "In victory you deserve it, and in defeat you need it." So, and his
that's Napoleon. Yes,
his definition of a defeat was different than the rest of us, because this has got us down a little bit. We're not defeated, correct?
But we still work very hardly, and we think I think all customers know that we work. We try to make lots of different cuvées. We try to work to make something different. We work with our art, with our passion, and we try to be more respectable as we can with the nature. So, well, I think champagne can be also good for health.
I agree. I agree. So that's a great way to finish. So I appreciate this opportunity. I know the next time I'm in Boozy, I will stop by and visit. This has been a pleasure.
Yes,
you will be welcome.
Please.
Thank you. Great pleasure talking to both of you. So many comments here in the chat room about how people love your wine. So
thank you for loving our wine anyway, and thank you to promote it in US. We really hope to come back to US very soon. We hope we can. We hope that Trump will leave us to go to come to see you. And anyway, look after yourself. Drink some champagne. It could help against Corona. We don't know. We never know.
every little bit helps. So no better way to do it than to drink champagne. So thank you again. So
you're very welcome. Thank you, Tom.
Great success for 2020 for a great growing season. So
hope to see you soon and continue to be champagne.
Santé. Cheers.
Cheers. Okay.